The night was silent, but something was wrong. Inside one of the most secure private vaults in the world, hidden beneath layers of steel, sensors, and state-of-the-art surveillance, a fortune had vanished. $65 million in untraceable bearer bonds. Gone. No alarms, no witnesses, no traces, just cold air and a blinking red light that no one noticed until hours later the world would soon know his name. But for now, he was just a ghost, Adrian Voss. Age 38, a man with no permanent address, no family, and no digital trail. A genius with a criminal mind, fluent in 5 languages, and even more fluent in codes, systems, and psychological manipulation. To most people, he didn't exist. But to those who knew the underground world of elite theft and black market finance, Adrian was a legend waiting for his masterpiece. And this was it. Months before the robbery, Adrian began the setup. It started with information. Not from hacking databases, those are traceable. Adrian did it the old-school way, social engineering. He posed as a consultant, interviewing former employees, studying behavior, and manipulating insiders without them even realizing it. He wasn't stealing data, he was stealing people's habits. He found weaknesses not in the vault itself, but in the people who controlled it. One guard with gambling debt. A software engineer bitter about being passed over for a promotion. A janitor who took the same smoke break every day at exactly 3:17 p.m. Each one was a piece of the puzzle, then came the tech. Adrian built his own hacking rig, disguised inside a vintage stereo case. No wireless connections, no external drives. Pure analog brilliance. It couldn't be traced because it didn't exist on any network. He didn't just hack the security system, he replaced parts of it, one tiny component at a time, over months, using the janitor's access and a fake maintenance badge. On the night of the heist, everything went dark, but only for 18.6 seconds. Long enough to bypass retinal scanners, fingerprint locks, and AI-based movement sensors. His team, trained to move with military precision, entered and exited without saying a word. Every move was rehearsed. Every step was calculated. There were no fingerprints, no DNA. The security footage? Looping footage Adrian had planted weeks earlier, timed down to the second. By the time the system rebooted, the vault looked untouched, and the money was already being transported under a diplomatic vehicle, heading toward a private jet registered to a shell corporation in the Cayman Islands. By morning, the world was in shock. The headlines screamed of an impossible robbery. Security experts called it flawless. Law enforcement had no leads. Not a single camera, satellite feed, or access log showed a breach. The police interrogated over 100 people. The building was shut down. Every staff member was investigated. But Adrian Voss? He was already gone, leaving behind nothing except a message encrypted into the vault's hard drive. You built a cage. I designed the key. This was no ordinary theft. It wasn't about greed. For Adrian, it was about mastery. The thrill of building something that no one else could see coming, pulling it off, and vanishing like smoke. He didn't just steal $65 million. He stole the belief that something could be truly secure. For 6 months, Adrian Voss was untouchable. Interpol, the FBI, Europol, all chasing ghosts. The $65 million theft had shattered the illusion of global security, and the world was desperate for answers. The only clue left behind was the message Adrian embedded in the vault's encrypted core. No fingerprints, no footage, no trail. Until the mistake. Not Adrian's mistake, his partner's. Nico Ramirez, the quiet one. Former French intelligence recruited by Adrian for his skill with logistics and his silence. But Nico had a weakness, his temper. After the heist, Adrian's rule was simple. Disappear for 1 year. No contact, no money moved, no trace. Nico lasted 7 months. He made a private cash deal in Prague with a former arms broker. Small time, just $50,000, but it was enough to trigger flags in a dormant Interpol surveillance net. The broker was already under watch. When they cross-checked footage, they spotted Nico. Interpol moved fast, tracking him to a safe house in Montenegro. They didn't find money, but they found something better: a secure drive, military-grade encryption, but inside it, fragments of the original heist plan, code names, drop zones, digital logs, and a real name: Adrian Voss. It was the first time his identity was confirmed. Within 72 hours, Adrian was found in a luxury eco-resort deep in Iceland, living under the alias Dr. Elias Wren, a fictional renewable energy scientist. He didn't resist. When the agents arrived, he simply looked up from his book, smirked, and said, "Took you long enough." Int black site. Interrogation room, unknown location, night. The room was cold, minimalist, 2 chairs, 1 steel table, no cameras visible, but Adrian knew they were there. Across from him sat Agent Rebecca Madsen, sharp, relentless, and furious. "Rebecca, you pulled off the most impossible robbery in history. Where's the money?" Adrian leaned back, calm as ever. "Adrian, if I told you, it wouldn't be the perfect crime anymore." They tried every tactic: isolation, psychological pressure, exhaustion. But Adrian wasn't just unbreakable, he was playing them. Every question they asked, he answered with riddles, stories, or silence. They traced every shell company, every offshore account, every possible connection. Nothing. The bearer bonds had vanished. Not a single one had resurfaced in the global market. It was as if they'd never existed. Rebecca, frustrated: "We have your plan. We know the network. We even know how you got in, but we still don't have what matters." Adrian: "Because you're still asking the wrong question." Rebecca: "Oh yeah? What's the right one?" Adrian smiled. "Adrian, why did I leave a trail?" That single sentence shattered their confidence. Had Adrian wanted to be caught? Was this all part of a longer game? Rumors began to swirl in the intelligence world that the heist wasn't about money, it was about misdirection, that the real target had never been the vault, but something else entirely: information, blackmail, data leverage. But none of it could be proven. After 2 months of interrogation, they still had no evidence admissible in any court. No confession, no recovered funds, just a man in a cell who always seemed a step ahead. And then, just like that, Adrian Voss vanished again, transferred during a high-risk movement to a secure facility. His transport was ambushed. The security team found sedated, vehicles burned, surveillance hacked, no fatalities, no leads. He was gone, again. And the $65 million? Still a ghost. They called it Blackridge, the fortress no one had ever escaped. Perched on a remote island off the coast of Scotland, surrounded by freezing waters, 24/7 drone patrols, and a double-layered electrified perimeter, Blackridge held only the world's most dangerous minds: terrorists, traitors, and men like Adrian Voss. After the heist and the mysterious failed interrogation, authorities decided Voss was too unpredictable for standard prisons. At Blackridge, his cell was isolated, with 2 guards on rotation, no internet access, and biometric locked doors. Conversations were monitored, every meal inspected, every hour accounted for. Yet Adrian never panicked. He read, he sketched, he watched. For 132 days, he mapped every pattern: guard routines, security changes, camera blind spots. He asked for books on philosophy, mechanics, and art. He talked calmly with guards, never aggressive, always curious. He played the role of the genius thief who had accepted defeat, but defeat was never in his vocabulary. Day 133, 2:46 a.m. The storm was brutal that night. Blackridge's defenses relied on weather-resistant systems, but during violent gales, radar surveillance was reduced. Just for a few minutes. That was all he needed. The guard rotation was late by 11 minutes, a small delay caused by a coffee spill near the north wing. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe that coffee had been sabotaged 2 days prior when Adrian struck up a conversation with the cafeteria cleaner through a cleverly written note disguised inside a book's pages. At 2:47 a.m., an emergency alert triggered pulse lock failure, cell B7. The door to Adrian's cell opened for 16 seconds. When guards arrived, the cell was empty, but there were no signs of escape, no forced entry. Cameras showed nothing. It was as if he had evaporated, until they noticed the ventilation system. A panel had been loosened, screws melted chemically, not unscrewed. A tiny tool, likely made from melted toothbrush plastic and embedded with smuggled aluminum shavings, had been used to weaken the panel over weeks. Crawling through the shaft wasn't possible for a grown man. But Adrian wasn't in the shaft. He had built a decoy. Inside the bed was a perfectly shaped body double, crafted with blankets, wire, and heated gel packs to mimic body warmth. The guards, watching from external monitors, never noticed the difference in infrared. Adrian had never left the cell at night. He escaped during the day, hours earlier, disguised as a visiting maintenance technician, a man who'd been brought in once a month to calibrate door sensors. The real technician was intercepted during a scheduled transfer, tranquilized, replaced, and left bound in a private compartment of the inbound supply boat. Adrian, wearing the uniform, passed every checkpoint using a cloned biometric glove, one he'd carefully created using skin oils lifted from a careless guard's food tray over weeks. The fake failure alarm at 2:47 a.m.? A diversion, meant to delay discovery. By the time the storm hit and they noticed his absence, he was already 30 kilometers away, diving into cold water from the supply boat, guided by a GPS beacon sewn into his uniform's lining. Authorities launched a manhunt across the UK and Northern Europe. Airports shut down. Borders were scanned. Facial recognition software was run through millions of images. Nothing. A week later, a short clip was anonymously posted on the dark web. Adrian Voss stood in front of a blurred city skyline. Adrian, security is an illusion. Freedom is understanding where the cracks form and walking through them before anyone else notices. He smiled. Then the screen went black. Blackridge's reputation was shattered. The man who had stolen $65 million had also stolen the impossible, freedom from the inescapable. And he was only just getting started. Governments searched everywhere. After Adrian Voss's escape from Blackridge, international task forces, cybercrime units, and forensic accountants launched the most expensive global hunt for missing money in financial history. $65 million in bearer bonds, a format with no tracking, no names, no paper trail. And yet, not a single bond had surfaced. Interpol assumed he'd stored the bonds offshore. But there were no warehouse records, no transport documents, no customs flags. CIA analysts speculated he'd digitized them, converted into cryptocurrency, but blockchain analysis showed no movement matching the theft timeline. It was as if the fortune had simply vanished. But that was the genius of Adrian Voss. He never intended to keep the money, not in the traditional sense. 2 years earlier, Adrian's secret workshop, Berlin stacks of obscure books, old banking manuals, a 3D printer humming softly. On his desk, a handwritten journal titled Ghost Protocols. Inside, sketched diagrams showed more than just the plan for the heist. It mapped a system of conversion. Adrian understood something most thieves never consider. Money isn't valuable. Control is. Before the heist even happened, he'd created a digital maze. Shell companies registered in countries with no extradition treaties, layered beneath decades-old trusts that were resurrected and altered using identities of people who had legally died abroad. He didn't move money, he moved ownership. The bearer bonds were never cashed. Instead, they were split into micro-portions, hidden inside private safety deposit boxes in over 20 countries, most under false names tied to businesses that didn't even know they existed. Some were stored with antique art, others bundled with diamonds, rare stamps, or gold, invisible beneath legitimate wealth. Adrian also converted portions into unlisted equity in tech startups, using offshore venture firms as intermediaries, a digital payment gateway in Estonia, a drone R&D company in Singapore, a private cybersecurity firm in Argentina, all legal, all clean. To the world, these businesses were thriving. To Adrian, they were vaults. Present day, Internal Task Force Operations Room. London agent Rebecca Madsen stared at the board. Hundreds of pins, threads, documents. Every lead had turned to dust. Every offshore path ended in a dead end. She leaned back, exhausted. Rebecca, we're not chasing the money. We're chasing shadows of it. And she was right. Even when a lead seemed solid, like the Cayman Island account linked to one shell company, it would dissolve just before they could act. Domains would go dark. Corporations would dissolve. Legal owners would vanish, replaced by another layer of corporate fog. The deeper they looked, the less real the money became. A single anonymous file sent to Rebecca's encrypted inbox changed everything. A zip file. Inside, a virtual simulation, built in Adrian's own coding style, showing the entire path of the $65 million. It was a joke, a digital game, a maze. Every level opened a new company name, a new offshore route, a new dead end. By the time the simulation ended, Rebecca realized the truth. The fortune hadn't vanished. It had been fragmented, not into dozens of pieces, but thousands. Each one just small enough to be ignored, lost in global traffic. A few thousand here, a rare collectible there. Some had probably been spent already, not by Adrian, but by the unwitting people managing the fronts he had built. And yet, he remained wealthy. Not by holding the money, but by always knowing where it was, and how to access it. It wasn't a bank account, it was an ecosystem. He didn't spend like a criminal, he invested like a ghost. To this day, governments track anomalies in the financial system, hoping one of them will lead back to the vanished fortune. But the world doesn't realize they're living in it. The Adrian Voss heist did more than steal $65 million. It stole confidence. Governments called it a wake-up call. Private banks called it an anomaly. Cybersecurity firms called it a systemic breach. But behind closed doors, everyone said the same thing. We still don't know how he did it. The robbery forced a reckoning. The vault in Zurich, advertised as the most secure on Earth, had never been compromised. It had triple biometric access, quantum-encrypted firewalls, pressure-sensitive floors, and AI-powered behavior monitoring. None of it had worked. After years of investigation, here's what experts agreed on. The breach wasn't just technological, it was psychological. Adrian hadn't just broken into a vault. He'd broken into people's minds. The human exploit. Adrian's brilliance wasn't in cracking code. It was in cracking people. Every sensor, camera, and digital lock had one common weakness. It was built, installed, and maintained by humans. He exploited their boredom, their routines, their assumptions. He studied how people behaved around security, how they grew comfortable, how protocols eroded over time. A technician who reused passwords, a guard who skipped a log entry, a manager who assumed background checks were enough. Security firms re-examined thousands of procedures worldwide after the heist. They found patterns, small habits, overlooked details, vulnerabilities no system was designed to catch. In Adrian's own words, shared in a leaked prison interview, "You don't beat the system, you let the system beat itself. All I did was nudge it gently." The unanswered questions. Even now, after years of investigation and analysis, there are questions no one can answer. How did Adrian access the inner vault without triggering the motion-sensitive laser grid? How did he disable the AI surveillance system without leaving a single code footprint? How did the bearer bonds exit the building without appearing on any scanner, manifest, or weight sensor? Some theories claim he had help from inside, high-level insiders, perhaps even directors. Others believe he used proprietary hacking tools that have never been seen before. One particularly wild theory suggests he manipulated the vault's predictive algorithm by teaching it false patterns over time, slowly training the AI to ignore real threats. But the truth is this: no theory fully explains everything. And that's what made him a legend. A global impact. The Voss effect, as it came to be known, triggered a $2 billion industry-wide overhaul. Vaults were redesigned, behavioral training programs were launched, entire companies rewrote their employee protocols. Cybersecurity companies began hiring psychologists. Pattern recognition was no longer enough. Now they had to account for human nature: fear, greed, laziness, arrogance. Military-grade facilities, nuclear sites, even presidential bunkers studied the breach. If one man could expose the cracks in something so airtight, what else was vulnerable? Adrian didn't just steal money, he proved that every system has a blind spot. The legend remains. His face became myth. Documentaries were made, books published. The Vault Phantom, the Invisible Billionaire. Every crime forum on the internet had a thread about him. Some even worshipped him. But he was never found again. Some say he retired in Monaco under a new identity. Others claim he lives in the Amazon jungle, unreachable by satellite. One rumor says he's alive in plain sight, living in a luxury penthouse in Tokyo, altering his face every 6 months, hiding among the elite. No one knows the truth. Only this remains. He exposed the myth of invincibility. He turned security into a question, not a promise. And he walked away with everything, without leaving anything behind.